You're listening to Honestly Aging by Friends Life Care VigR, a podcast where we explore what it's like getting older, the peaks, the valleys, and everything in between. In this season of Honestly Aging by Friends Life Care VigR, we're covering topics related to vibrant aging. I'm your host, Cheryl Praska. Let's grow old together. On today's episode, I'm joined by Mario Mascioli, who is a certified athletic trainer and strength and conditioning coach. Mario is the owner of Mass Movement, a health and fitness business in the greater Philadelphia area. Prior to starting Mass Movement, Mario held athletic trainer positions with St. Joseph's University, the Delaware Bluecoats, and the Philadelphia 76ers. Mario, welcome, and thank you for being here. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Cheryl. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Absolutely. Mario, you're joining me today to discuss longevity, personal training, and maintaining a healthy lifestyle as you age. To start, can you share a bit about your background, including your time with the 76ers and what led you to start your organization, Mass Movement?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so my background is in sports medicine. I'm a certified athletic trainer. And just to eliminate any confusion on what that is, a lot of people think that an athletic trainer is a personal trainer. And I also am a strength and conditioning specialist, so that can get more confusing. I am a personal trainer, but I'm also a certified athletic trainer. And what that is that's in the healthcare field related to sports. So that's like the treatment and evaluation and management of orthopedic injuries. And I went to school for that specifically because sports were a big part of my life. I loved participating in soccer and basketball. I love competition, and I had a number of injuries that took me, out of playing time and things like that. When I got exposed to physical therapy and how the body can heal, it really piqued my interest. I started thinking this would be really neat to come alongside other people and help them figure out what's going on and get them back to something that they love and enjoy. So that's why I went to Westchester University and enrolled in that program. And shortly after that, I got an opportunity to assist the 76ers with their preseason training that they were having at St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia. And I was able to make some connections with the training staff there, and that landed me into an internship. And then that internship pretty much went into 5 years of working with the team. So it was a great experience. Basketball is my favorite sport. I was very much into college basketball and the NBA, and so there was an excitement about being around professional athletes, and I just enjoyed watching them play every day. There were a lot of hard lessons to learn because I was very eager to apply the skills I had just learned after being certified. But as the lower man on the totem pole and as an intern, I had to do a lot of grunt work and prove that I was reliable. And I did. And so eventually, I started traveling with the team. And that was a very exciting experience. You get to go on private planes. There's food all the time. There's always food in the hotels, in the planes, in the locker room. They just keep the players, well supplemented. And then just getting to know some of the players better. Eventually, I went to the D League, which is the developmental league. And I was the head athletic trainer there, but it was very different from the NBA because we had about 15 staff members dedicated to athletes' health by the time I transitioned to that D-League position. And I went from 15 staff members to just me. I was the sole caretaker of the team, and we had very limited resources. So while this was a promotion, it definitely had its challenges. And really, what ended up happening was I always struggled with maintaining appropriate boundaries for myself so I can take care of myself, because I was very much a caretaker and still am. So in taking care of everyone else and trying to put out a bunch of different fires, I had a very high stress level. I was very isolated, and I didn't have a strong sense of community because at that time I was away from family and friends, and I was just traveling all the time. I wasn't eating well, and I had a number of digestive issues that were affecting me. And I was not getting good sleep. I was just pushing the boundaries in terms of work. So I was not a healthy person, even though I was taking care of other people's health. So ultimately, I decided to leave because I felt the lifestyle wasn't for me and I needed to take care of myself. So that led me into strength and conditioning, because I always loved working out, and there's such a strong connection to that and rehabilitation. So I got certified as a strength and conditioning specialist. I started to work under another trainer, and we trained older adults coming out of physical therapy to help them, just become stronger and then rebound and become more functional. And after that, I decided I just wanted to go on my own. I always had dreams of owning my own business. And that's when I created Mass Movement. And so the goal of Mass Movement was really taking what I had learned, which is after leaving the Sixers, getting back into routines, doing my own strength and functional training. I was reminded of how good it feels to be strong and to have increased energy levels, and just how much movement and strength can reduce pain and other issues. That was my experience. And I know many others I've worked with have experienced that. And so when I created Mass Movement, the goal was to do that. It was to share the gift of strength and movement to other people, as well as help people dealing with their pain.
Thank you for sharing all that. And something I want to reflect on is hearing you talking about finding the lifestyle that's right for you. And that goes hand in hand with what we're going to get into later in this episode, which is longevity. If you're not taking care of yourself, you're going to get burned out, and that may have an impact on your longevity. So the fact that you knew yourself, you listened to your body and your mind, definitely commendable. And I appreciate you sharing so openly about that, because not everyone does.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I believe that sharing our stories and our mistakes can just help other people. And it's ultimately led me to where I am now. And so that is something I'm passionate about doing. Is I want to help people get out of a rut, or I want to help them prevent them from going the path that I did, which was just complete burnout. Definitely wasn't sustainable for me personally. So yeah.
And that's a great segue into my next question, which I'd love to hear more about your approach to personal training, and tell us what a typical client engagement might look like.
Yeah, absolutely. So my coaching is going to be a fusion of sports medicine, and some exercise-based principles, because of my background, and the professional experience and study I had. So this definitely is reflected in how I do my assessments and how I map out training sessions. And because I'm an athletic trainer, I have the ability to do manual therapy. And my sessions with people, depending on what they're coming to see me for, can be a combination of manual therapy techniques to help with recovery from pain or tightness, but then also working out. So in that way, it can be a one-stop shop, and that's a bit of what it's like to work with me. For me, it's all about individualization. So everyone is different, and every physical body is going to be different. Um, and so my coaching plans will be done based on the individual movement and strength assessment that I do with people. So if someone were to, come see me, the first session would be a bit longer. It'd probably be like 90 minutes as opposed to 60 minutes, so that I have more time to do a combination of an assessment and also a workout. And that workout is not going to be I'm not there to kill someone, and push them to their limits in that first session. It's really just, again, to assess, how do they move? Where is there an asymmetry in their body? Where are they compensating, or where are they really deficient? And to get to know the person, even before I would meet someone in person, there would be some type of phone call or conversation to get to know their goals, their past experience, their personality, their reservation, their fears, all that I take into consideration in order to make the right plan of action. Yeah, so that would be what a initial interaction would look like with me, and then some of the other, I would say, main principles I have would be, if you're going to ultimately increase your strength and overall performance, whether that's athletic performance or just your daily overall physical performance in your life, you need proper execution of the movement. So technique and quality are really important to me. And then you also need a plan. A plan is like a map. It helps you get to your destination. If you don't have a plan, you might wander, you might plateau, you might not get the results you want. So that also includes mapping out rest days. It's not all about what you're doing in the gym or with physical exercise. A good plan would map out the time you need your body to recover. That can equally be as important at times. And then regardless of who you are, there will be, I think we'll get into this later, there will be kind of some main movements I'll put people through. But I want it to be sustainable for people. That's the last thing that is a principle of mine, is sustainability. If the workouts or the nutrition plan or any plan of action is not sustainable for a person over the long term, meaning it's too overwhelming, or they don't have enough time or space or whatever it is, then it should be changed. Because what happens is people get burned out, or they get discouraged, and ultimately they end up stopping. And that's not going to do anything for you. So the key is consistency, and the plan of action and programs have to be something that an individual where they can get themselves to follow through with it. So overall, it's going to be individualization, making sure that there's proper movement and form, sustainability, and just using that background I have and skills I have to address all the issues that a person might have outside of just giving them a workout program.
As someone starts following the plan or the map that you've outlined together consistently, what are some of the benefits that they may start to see? And I'd like to ask if you could speak to this, especially related to an older adult.
So for someone who is going to start implementing exercise, back into their life, I would say this. So imagine if I told you that I have something that if you utilized it, it would provide you with, these specific qualities. You would have increased energy levels. You would maintain or increase your muscle mass. You would sleep better. You would have decreased stress levels. Your bone mineral density, or just like your bone health, would increase. And much, much more. You would probably be like, okay, well, what is that? Because that's a lot of things that I want to hit on. And that would be exercise, or specifically resistance training. That, doing that it really does promote all of those things. So if someone starts to work out or work with a personal trainer, they can expect to, over time, have that increased energy level, maybe sleep better, just overall feel better. And it is going to also help with, I would say, avoiding injury in the future. So if you work with a personal trainer, one thing that's a benefit of that is you're going to prevent the risk of injury when you're actually working out. The trainer knows what he's doing, and it helps you perform the movement properly and know what weight to use. He's watching you. He can be your spotter, prevent falling, pick movements also that help you avoid pain, not create pain. And you're going to get that individualized program, and there's going to be motivation that is provided. But then as you kind of progress, I would say for older adults, like a big thing would be just thinking of functional things. Can you maintain a walking pace? As we get older, that can tend to decrease. Being able to, like you said, go up and down stairs without just being gassed, as you age. Being able to carry things up and down stairs, like you said, groceries, I think that's a big one. It's very, very daily life oriented. Being able to balance or prevent falls, different types of physical activity, and then also strength training is going to help you avoid that in the long term. And then I would say just joint pain. You could expect maybe decreased joint pain. There really are a lot of benefits with having a routinely physically exercising.
Hearing all these benefits, I'm imagining will encourage some of our listeners to want to start some type of exercise routine. Now, there's also going to be people who perhaps either have never really exercised regularly, or they have and now they're trying to ease back into it. Mm-hmm. So I'd be curious to hear your recommendation for what is the best way to start easing back into a fitness routine, or at least incorporating some more movement into our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that the first thing right off the bat is just feel free to start small. And the best way to do that is track your step count. Just try to get in more steps, like walk. So a good place to start is 10,000 steps a day. How you get that in, there could be varying ways. You could choose a time to go walk each day, and you don't have to get 10,000 steps in that walk. But it could be going for a walk. It could be when you go to the grocery store and instead of parking, right as close as you can, park farther away so you can walk more. Again, if you're physically able. So step count would be a great way to start. It's going to help your cardiovascular health. It's just going to get you moving more. Another thing I would suggest if you're trying to get into it is pick something that you enjoy and try doing new things. if you don't enjoy it, you're going to have less motivation to keep up with it. So it's best to just, there's so many ways to move your body. And I will say this, if you want to pick some exercise that's kind of biggest bang for your buck, swimming and racket sports are known to have the best cardiovascular development. And swimming is very gentle on joints. It's not stressful. Racket sports are going to be definitely more stressful, but research has shown that the people who consistently play racket sports actually have a longer life expectancy, probably just because of the strength and the cardiovascular fitness required. So that's something. But yeah, try swimming, try the elliptical, pickleball, try lifting weights, try Pilates, yoga. It doesn't matter. If you find something where you're like, man, I like that, do it. And that's going to help you stay more healthy. And then when it comes to resistance training, if you've never done it, or you've done it and you just hate it, because that is possible, I would also start small. Think like, what can I do for 20 minutes? Don't kill yourself, and just have some progressions. And that's, where a trainer could come in. But just doing a body weight routine could even be like a good place to start. So walking, having fun, trying something that you enjoy, trying new things, starting small with weights. And then the last thing would be do it with friends or a partner or someone for accountability. And it can be more fun that way.
The accountability factor does come up consistently throughout the episode. So I also want to echo that, and just the socialization aspect of doing it with a friend or someone in your community, a walking neighbor, something like that could be really helpful. So I appreciate you bringing that into the conversation.
Yeah.
Now, before we get into talking more specifically about longevity, I feel like all over social media, I'm seeing information telling me about supplements. I've never really been exposed to supplements aside from my multivitamin. I'm curious whether some of my listeners who are older adult are facing the same thing. And I'd like to hear, in your professional opinion, are there any supplements that older adults should explore?
Yeah, that's always a question I get. And that is because we live in a very materialistic, consumeristic society where everyone is trying to sell you something and tell you that if you do this thing or get this thing, it is going to solve all your problems. And I do want to be clear. Earlier in my statement, just lifting weights, I'm not saying that's going to solve all your problems, but it does have a lot of benefits. But if anyone tells you that like a supplement is going to be like a miracle, I would just be cautious. I think supplements are meant to be supplemental. They're not necessarily meant to be the foundation of, your health. So you mentioned a multivitamin. That's the first thing I would say, especially for the aging population. You just want to make sure that if maybe your diet isn't getting in all the vitamins and minerals that would support healthy bodily function, that you kind of cover your bases. And a multivitamin can do that for you. So at a minimum, do that. But ideally, you're going to get what you need from a healthy diet of whole foods, fresh foods, carbohydrates that are called complex carbohydrates and not just nutrient deficient and all sugar. Healthy fats, and quality protein. If you have like that well-balanced diet, you're going to get most of what you need. But again, as we age, it can be good to just supplement with that multivitamin. I would also say vitamin D. This is important for healthy bones. It interacts with calcium to create strong and healthy bones. And so doing some type of vitamin D supplementation, I would also recommend. The other one is protein. So again, we're talking about things to supplement our diet. If you are able to identify that you're not really getting enough protein in your diet, then try some type of protein shake, or something with just a larger amount of protein that wouldn't be that hard to fit in. It could be protein powder. Those things can be helpful. And especially if you're looking to maintain muscle or gain muscle mass, then you need the right amount of protein when you're working out. And to just tell you off the bat, generally, if you could aim for 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, that would be ideal. And starting off, that can be hard for people. And that's why having some type of protein supplement could work. So what do we say? Multivitamin, vitamin D, protein. And then I would say fish oils too. It can be hard sometimes to get those healthy fats in, those omega-3 and 6s. If you eat a diet with a lot of fish in it, then you're probably going to be fine because that is in fish. It's heavy in fish. But if you don't, fish oils are great because it is beneficial for brain function, for neurological functioning, for your heart health, and also your skin and joint lubrication. It has a lot of beneficial effects. So for the aging population, I also recommend those things. But first off, multivitamin is a good place to start.
And they're all mainstream, and none of that is surprising. However, all of it I don't have at the forefront of my mind. And it's interesting to hear you talk about, for example, how vitamin D works in partnership with calcium. So just hearing your recommendation and about how fish oils help with joint lubrication. I would never where I sit put that together. So it's important to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does warrant sometimes researching some of these supplements for quality, because I will say the FDA does not regulate these type of supplements. So what that means is so a calcium pill, for instance, it could say it has X amount of calcium in it, but they only need about 30% of that labeled amount for it to get to the shelves. So not all supplements are equal. Let's put it that way. So finding a company that goes through kind of a vetting process with their, with some of their vitamins, or same with fish oils. It might take a little more research, but I would advise that there's a specific multivitamin I use that's actually liquid, because I don't like taking a bunch of pills, and it tastes good. And just with the company and how they do things and how they make it, there's a higher rate of absorption that you're going to get. So, and if anyone would have interest on that, I can, send that to you, and you could blast it out if they're interested in looking in that specific multivitamin. But, yeah, just a side note on vitamins.
Perfect. And yeah, if you can send that to me, we'll link it in the description of the episode.
Okay, great.
So now let's get into the next portion of our conversation, which is talking about longevity. Can you start by defining longevity for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Pretty simply, longevity would be defined as it's your ability to live a long life while maintaining your physical function and independence. So it's not just living longer, but it is the quality of that life, a healthy life, having a certain level of physical and mental vitality. Aging happens to all of us. We are all aging. It's inevitable. But longevity, I believe, with longevity, there are things we can do to slow that process down, or to age in a way while still feeling physically vital. Some of the physical goals or signs, I would say, of someone who's aging well or maintaining a physical longevity would be maintaining flexibility, a level of flexibility. I would say maintaining a level of balance, and also lower body strength. Those are things that I think will help us age well. Muscular strength and actually even grip strength. That's kind of been shown to be a kind of like a sign or a test or an assessment that can be associated with someone's physical vitality. There's also these are very functional things, but carrying things. If you're able to carry like your body weight in your hands, or half or 75%, there are some studies that suggest that is correlated with a longer lifespan. So it's just some of these functional things matter. And like walking speed is another one. I think I mentioned that earlier. So having a level of physical strength and flexibility, balance and walking speed, those would be signs, I would say, of longevity for the future.
Would you prefer to age independently in your own home or live in a nursing facility? I know what I'd rather do. Friends Life Care membership offers just that. Plan today for a future lived at home with vitality, independence, growth, and resilience while protecting your savings. Learn about your options at a free seminar or webinar. Register at friendslifecare.org/register or call 215-628-8964. Welcome back to Honestly Aging by Friends Life Care VigR, where today I'm joined by Mario Mascioli to talk about longevity, personal training, and maintaining a healthy lifestyle as we age. I think you've prepared some longevity stats from around the world for us. It was a very kind offer of you when we were prepping for this interview, and I want to invite you to share them now.
Yeah, absolutely. This is kind of fascinating to me. So I like to talk about it, but, just to start off, before talking about kind of stats around the world, or different people groups, our genetics are going to play a factor in longevity. So it's about maybe 20 to 30% of your longevity will be influenced by genetics. But what I take from that is that there's a high percentage that is in our control. And that can be very empowering. It doesn't mean that adopting certain habits will be easy, but it definitely is empowering. And so we can learn from certain populations. Asian populations tend to have the highest life expectancy. And some of these other countries with higher life expectancy would be Japan, Hong Kong, and then most Western European nations, they live about 80 to 85 years on average. And this is influenced by several factors that we'll go over, that a person would be able to control. I don't know if anyone has heard of blue zones. Have you ever heard of blue zones, Cheryl?
I've heard about blue zones. I've
Mhm,
read a little bit about them.
mhm.
You're
Okay.
going to know way more than me, though.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So blue zones are just they're locations around the world. They're geographical locations where people tend to live lifestyle or live significantly longer than the average, and it's usually due to a combination of lifestyle factors, and that would include healthy diet, regular physical activity, um, actually strong social connections, and having a sense of purpose. And this is just based off of what researchers believe from doing studies and talking to people in these areas are contributing to the longevity. And the only reason they're called blue zones is just it originates from when researchers were marking these areas, and they used a blue pen on a map. So that's why they're just called blue zones, highlighted zones. And um, to get really specific, if someone wants to look into this more, um, some of the well-known blue zones are Okinawa, Japan, Sardinia, Italy, the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, Icaria, Greece, and then actually Loma Linda, California. Um, and if it's okay, I'll give some other key points to the blue zones because I'm sure it's gonna go into kind of the rest of our conversation. But in terms of diet, these people usually are eating a plant-based diet or heavy with like fish. And their physical activity, it's kind of like integrated into their daily life. It's either they have these routines or the way their lifestyle is, like it might involve more walking or just more moving with their daily, like the responsibilities of their daily life. Um, and research just suggests that if you adopt, similar habits to these people, then you can impact your personal longevity and specifically the risk of chronic diseases and just promoting your overall health. So, yeah, there's some kind of information in regards to longevity around the world.
You've teed up so beautifully what we're going to get into next, talking about the blue zones, which are those core tenets of longevity. We're going to go piece by piece. I just want to reintroduce it to the listeners. We're going to talk about physical activity, nutrition, sleep, mindset and attitude, and social connection.
Mm-hmm.
So to start off, can you talk about, and you've already touched on it
Mm-hmm.
more, I do want to just really hit it home here, how regular physical activity contributes to longevity?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like I was saying, as a quick review, there are benefits of like weight loss if you're doing resistance training, muscle growth, relieving stress, increased energy levels, potentially pain relief, memory retention, your balance, preventing injury, and then ultimately just living longer. When it comes to motion, I tell a lot of my clients, motion is lotion. Our muscles get stiffer or they get what's called less plastic. Um, the ability to stretch and then return to their original form or length, that decreases as we age. But consistently moving our bodies helps us stay off that stiffness and maintain a level of mobility. Different types of activity are going to enhance your coordination and balance. That's why I think it's also good to mix it up a little bit. And as we age, our ability to balance decreases. But making this a part of your daily practice can stay that off. Bone mineral density is important. And if you move your body and you put the right amount of stress on it, then your bone is going to respond positively. So bone responds to stress. And again, the right amount of stress. But if we don't stress it, it's just going to get weak, could lead to osteoporosis. And then my personal experience, and I would say anecdotally with others, is that moving and training can help relieve pain. And I've found that for me, I've had a lot of injuries. I'm only 34, but if I just, let's say, take 2 to 4 weeks of not training or really not moving my body, there are certain areas where I had injuries and I will get pain. So I don't know if anyone's experienced that, but when I regularly move my body, I feel fine. And again, that's not everyone, but I have found that to be an experience that other people have as well.
I've had that experience myself during my pregnancies where I'm used to a pretty high level of physical activity. As the baby got bigger, I couldn't move as quickly or as agilely as I once did. So then having to work my way back up, it was a slow process and definitely with some aches and pains that came with it. So yeah, definitely, a body in motion stays in motion. And, I can somewhat relate to people going through some type of physical recovery that it is the slow and steady to get back into it.
Right. And sometimes that's the way that it is. Again, if someone's starting off and they're pretty sedative, or even if they're like, hey, I move my body, I walk and, I feel pretty good, but I want to get into strength training and they haven't done strength training at all, or they haven't done it in a year or something. It is good to start slow because the body will have to adapt, and you want to work to avoid pain, not create more pain.
Absolutely. Now let's move on to nutrition. How might nutrition support a long life?
Yeah, nutrition is, this is going to be really cliche, but we'll talk about it a little. You are what you eat, literally. What we eat, when you think about it, it gets broken down in our bodies and it's used as fuel for our cells. And literally that food is used to create new cells. And just all the little, the proteins in our body and all the functions. So what we eat over time, and I would stress that what we eat over time, what the trend is, will drastically affect our body's ability to function and how just it will be and how we will feel in the future. It affects our tissue quality. And by that, I don't just mean like our muscle. I mean, every tissue, like our organs, all are made of specific tissue. So it affects every single organ, our heart, our nervous system, our veins, bone, skin. So what you eat builds up over time in your body. And I would make one more point. An example would be like the amount of fat on our body, right? That is going to increase our chances of disease or morbidity, excuse me. And food that is more processed, that's going to have toxic effects on our body as well. So nutrition is so important for the functions that we want to maintain, as we get older. And I can't stress it enough. And it doesn't mean you have to, not eat anything that you like. But I think that what I would encourage people to think about with nutrition would just be, okay, let's do an assessment and like, what's one area I could change where if I made this change, I know that in 5 or 7 years, that's going to have a cumulative positive effect. Identify one thing where you're like, yeah, this is kind of unhealthy. What can I replace that with? Or this is just something I don't have in my diet, period. Let me try to add this in over time. So yeah, nutrition is just, I would say it might be the key, the number one thing to support a long life.
And I love the position that you're taking with, it's not always restricting or cutting back or saying, I'm never going to eat XYZ again. It is more so focusing on those shifts that you can make, as well as what can we add into our diet and our meal plans. And if you're adding in fiber, protein, leafy vegetables, that's going to also help you stay fuller. So I love that the adding approach to nutrition. That's at least what I like to do.
Right. Yeah, I would absolutely. I think people tend to think, especially when they're like, I want to lose weight, they're just thinking of restriction. But when it comes to a healthy life or nutrition, a lot of times it could just be identifying what you don't have that's good in your diet and just adding it in.
Great point.
Yeah.
Now, my biggest area of improvement we'll cover next, which is sleep, which I hate to even cross into this because I'm a victim of not getting enough sleep. But let's hear from you. How important is sleep in longevity? And are there any best practices for improving sleep, especially as we get older?
Yeah, this is something I think in our day and age that most people could improve upon. We're just living in a culture nowadays where it's based on productivity and I think trying to squeeze in as much as possible. We also have a lot of distractions and things like screens that can distract us late at night and just keep us from going to bed. And I'll say, like, I struggle with that too. So, when it comes to sleep, it's actually a lot of people who come to me want to know like the best strategies for physical recovery, like especially athletes. They're all about recovery because they're doing so much on their bodies. And the answer is sleep for them. It's not massage, it's not ice baths. Those all have their place. But someone could do, all the recovery tactics. And if they're not sleeping well, then they're not going to recover as much from whatever physical exercise they're doing in the day. Like for instance, more research has been showing how it even changes athletes' athletic performance. So like an example in basketball would be if athletes have tacked on more hours of sleep during their week, then their free throw percentage increases. Their speed, like their sprint speed, increases slightly, and same with their reaction time. So while that study's on athletes, I feel pretty confident and safe to say that translates to all of us and our daily functioning, how we feel, our ability to react, our ability to balance or support ourselves. But some of the things, just to get into some of the things that happen during sleep, why sleep's important, and then we'll go into how to improve the sleep, is the brain and the body is doing so much while you're sleeping. It is its recovery time. So, one thing is the immune system. During sleep, our immune system gets boosted, and that's going to help us fight off infection. A lack of sleep is going to weaken the immune system, and so illness will be more likely. Your brain and your memory. During sleep, the brain processes information from your day and it creates new memories and it organizes your memories and everything that you're learning. So it's going to help with memory recall. It's going to help with learning. You're going to have less mental fog during if you get enough sleep. And the brain is also flushing out toxins during sleep. Muscularly, sleep promotes cell repair. So growth hormone is going to be released into the body during sleep. And that is going to stimulate your tissue to grow and muscle repair. If you're recovering from an injury, it's going to help with healing from an injury. And it also allows the body to create protein, which is not just important for muscle, but protein it's a building block of muscle, but proteins are used for a bunch of different cellular functions in every organ. So it has more, the ability to create protein is really big for your entire body function. And that happens during sleep. And then of course, like your energy, glycogen is what the body uses for energy. It breaks it down and is put into the bloodstream and goes into the cells for energy. But your metabolic system goes to work at night to restore those glycogen stores and to store that into your body. So sleep is needed for us to live, and if you've gone 24 hours without sleep, or you've gone for an extended period of time without sleep, I think kind of how it makes you feel, right? It's kind of just something the body needs. So I think you asked about how we could maybe improve sleep. Here would be kind of my simple places to start. One is try to have a sleep schedule. So when do you go to bed at night and when do you wake up in the morning? If you do that, your brain, your body is going to get used to that rhythm and you're going to sleep better. There's something called circadian rhythms in our brain, and sticking to a schedule will help with that so that you can fall asleep easier and wake up easier instead of your body being kind of confused. Can help prevent, waking up at times that you don't want to. So stick to a sleep schedule if you can. And then another is create a bedtime routine. And the whole point of a bedtime routine is just to train your brain to get ready for sleep. So that could look a lot of different ways. It doesn't have to look one way. But I would say some ideas would be, when do you stop drinking as much fluid? Like that would be a good idea, because the more fluid you drink later at night, the more you'll probably wake up to have to go to the bathroom. And that can disrupt your sleep. Same with eating. If you eat a lot of food right before bed, it can kind of disrupt your sleep. So just kind of having a checkpoint of like, okay, this is kind of maybe when I'm going to stop eating. This is when I'm going to be conscious of what I'm drinking. And then what are things that help you relax? Maybe it's, dimming lights. I would definitely say avoiding bright lights or electronics is going to help you fall asleep or sleep better, because those type of lights emitted from the electronics, the TV, they stimulate the brain and the body more. So yeah, it could be reading, it could be taking a shower, it could just be picking a couple things that if you do them enough, it's kind of like a trigger, like, the body is saying, hey, we're drinking tea. And when we drink tea at night, that means we're going to sleep. So let's get ready for sleep. And then another thing to just think about is decreasing weight. If someone is overweight, can help sleep. Just because research shows that increased weight, or if you're overweight, it can lead to things like sleep apnea, which can disrupt sleep. So to improve sleep, Try to stick to a sleep schedule, create a bedtime routine, try to get rid of the bright lights and the electronics. And prioritize it.
I learned so much from that. And I can take a lot of that into my own life. And I especially love the routine and the schedule, because for me, I might have a schedule all week and then on the weekend it goes out the door. So just trying to be more consistent, I know will certainly help me. And I know it's going to help our listeners. So thanks for all of those tips. Very helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Moving on to mindset and attitude. So how does our mindset and our attitude influence longevity?
Yeah, this is one where I think it can be easy for people to discount it or see it as what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of voodoo-y or things like that. And I'll give an example why. It's because I think it's hard to conceptualize how just something we can't see that's not physical, like a mindset, thoughts, emotions, can affect our physical body. But there really is a lot of evidence for how these things affect our physical body. And when you think about it, we're very complex as humans. Our brain, which is kind of the center for our thoughts and our emotions, well, I mean, it's our brain. That's a very physical thing. And so while thoughts and emotions can maybe somewhat be seem ethereal or abstract, they're produced from the brain, and that is all connected to our body. We're very, very much a unit. So I want to just give an example of evidence that translate how words and thoughts and mindset can affect your physical body. So maybe you already know this, or some other people have heard this before, but there have been some research. There's a Japanese scientist, and his name is I'm going to read it because I don't want to mess up his name. It's Masaru Emoto. He performed these experiments with frozen water in the late 1990s, and what they were testing is the crystallization of the frozen water, and the effect of positive or negative words or phrases on the actual crystal structure of the frozen water. So to one group of water, they were speaking negative words and phrases. And to the others, they spoke positive words and phrases. And after a period of time, the negative group, the crystal structure was disfigured. It was kind of like ugly and very cloudy. While the positive group, the crystal structures were very clear and kind of like in it very aesthetically pleasing or beautiful patterns. And you can look this up online and you can see the images for yourself. But the point of the study was to demonstrate that there's power of words. They impact living things. So if we take that a step further, let's say you're not necessarily speaking out a word or phrase. Let's just take something very common, I think, for lots of people. It could be something like, I'm not good enough, right? Someone might not say that verbally, but they might think it. They might not even be aware that they're thinking it, but it can still be a thought. It could even be a belief, right? We all have beliefs. We all have perspectives in which we see the world. Those beliefs and perspectives, they create thoughts, whether we are aware of them or not, right? Our thoughts, they create emotions. Every thought has an emotion attached to it. So again, you might be aware of these things, you might not be aware of them, but thoughts will create emotions. Our emotions, they're energy in motion. they do something to us, right? When we feel sad or when we feel happy, it can directly influence our actions or behavior. So if I'm feeling lonely and sad, I might react to that by eating a pint of ice cream, right? Or I might react to that by calling a friend. One's negative behavior, one's more of a beneficial behavior. But then that behavior can directly affect our bodies. So that might have sounded complicated, but all what I'm saying is that everything's tied together. Beliefs lead to thoughts, thoughts impact our emotions impact our behaviors, and our behaviors impact our bodies. And to just give another example, it has been shown that like our thoughts and all these things, they can lead to stress, right? Certain thoughts can lead to stress. And we know that stress has a negative effect on our physical bodies because it can increase our levels of cortisol, which is a stress hormone. And when there's too much of that for a sustained period of time, it actually suppresses our immune system. So there is a link between things like optimism and a stronger or a less strong immune system. It also can affect our perception of pain. Our words, our thoughts, our attitude, they can decrease our perception of pain. And can lead to faster recovery. And I can attest to that. There's been studies where belief has been a sole factor in speed of recovery for athletes and things like that. So it's just very interesting. But it's something to not neglect. It's something to take stock of is, do I have a more negative way of thinking or speaking, or is it positive? And how can I become aware of just that thing alone of what I'm thinking and feeling, and then looking into how do I change, how do I make practical efforts to change that? And I know I might be talking a lot on this subject here, but the last thing I'll say is an easy practical thing to help with mindset and attitude would be a practice of thankfulness, focusing on what you have, not on what you don't have, and what you are actually thankful for. And that has a lot of research behind how that affects people positively in their life.
And when you were just talking, what jumped out to me was the different ways that we can handle maybe some negative thoughts. Like if we're having a negative thought, we could handle it by like eating that pint of ice cream or calling our friend, asking for help, reaching out. And that brings me into the last area that we want to talk about with longevity, which are our social connections. Feeling connected to others, feeling connected to the world at large. And I'd love to hear some of your perspectives on how our social connection positively impacts longevity and our health span.
Yeah. I do think this is one thing that we probably don't think about in relation to our longevity or physical health as much either. It's just not as obvious, but I'll give my perspective. And then this isn't something that I'm as much of an expert on. So I actually did some research and I'll share what I found. So from my perspective, it's that as humans, we are relational beings in order just to survive, right? To survive, we need each other. You could take this maybe way back to the beginning of time and, how communities form or tribes or things like that in order to protect one another, in order to, nurture and create life. I mean, even just the family structure, thinking of children, right? We all at some point needed people to be taking care of us in order to get to where we are now as adults. And then as adults, we don't just have physical needs, like we have these emotional needs and desires. And I think just the fact that we have the desires for connection, for love. I think that is just proof in of itself that we are social and emotional beings, and we need community. So that's kind of my perspective on it. And I believe the biggest way it affects our health is through our mental health. So with some of the things I found, positive impacts of social connections, one is reduced stress. So a strong social support can help you manage stress levels. Makes sense. You have people to talk to about the things that are stressing you. Improved mood. So when you feel connected, it can boost happiness. And it can reduce feelings of like loneliness. Enhanced immune system. We've talked about that a lot. There's a lot of things that I'm talking about that decrease or increase your immune system. So studies suggest that social connection can strengthen the immune system, so it can help you recover faster from illness. It can promote healthy behaviors, right? People with strong social networks are more likely to engage in healthy habits like exercise and nutrition. And that's something I didn't know, but that I found from research. And then increased longevity. Research indicates a strong correlation between strong social ties and a longer lifespan. And that's something they found with the research on the blue zones that we talked about. So, and then the negative things, they're kind of the opposite. But, there can be an increased risk of depression and anxiety. There's actually cardiovascular concerns. I thought it was interesting. I guess some research has shown that there has been some links to a higher risk of heart disease and stroke. That's interesting. Immune system can be weakened. And then something I also found is that studies suggest that feelings of loneliness can be associated with an increase in risk of dementia in older adults. And I don't say those things to scare anybody. I think it's more of just, that's something where if people can just listen to this, say, I don't have a lot of people in my life. How do I, and I want to, it's just, again, with everything else, it's like, what is maybe a step I could do to socialize more, to have the opportunity to make a friend. And that might take some effort. For others, it's not going to be as hard. For others, it might take some time and it might take some effort. But it is something that can increase just the happiness in your life. And I think it's something that we need. We need social interaction.
So, from everything we've talked about throughout the episode, I would really like to hear what's coming to the forefront of your mind that you would like to leave listeners with about Mario's top things that we can focus on to help us really live at a long, healthy life.
Yeah, I think, I'll summarize it and then I will highlight one or two. But really, it is the things we talked about. One, if you don't regularly exercise, start exploring how to move your body more and to have an exercise routine. Again, we talked about it could be as simple as starting to walk more, 10,000 steps, or it could be trying something new that's fun with other people. But number one, start moving your body more. Having an exercise routine. Two is your nutrition, right? It really is maybe the key, I think, for longevity. But my point to you would be, if you trying to think of how you can, better your nutrition, is focus on one positive change. And that could be taking something out. But it might be a good idea to focus on the positive and be like, what is it that I could add in? Kind of just like with the movement. So exercise, nutrition, but think of one thing. And then sleep, mindset, and uh, social connection. So for the sleep part, I would just say create a routine or write down a routine and try to stick with it as best as you can. And it could take some time. It could be, you experiment with, okay, I liked this morning routine. I liked how it felt. I enjoyed doing this in the morning, or, oh no, like this was too much. I tried to cram too much stuff in. It could look like that, but try to pick a sleep routine and stack a morning and an evening routine to that sleep routine. And then the last thing I would say would be, if someone is struggling with their mental or emotional state or health, don't be afraid to seek help. For instance, people come to me for their physical health, right? They come to me like in pain and they want to solve a chronic knee issue, or they come to me because they're feeling crappy and they want to get in shape and they want to, do what they can to better their physical health. Well, there's experts who are also there for you with your mental and emotional state. And like we talked about, like, don't discount that. That is tied to your physical health. Actually, both tie into each other. You'll probably find that if you aren't exercising and you start exercising, that maybe some of the areas you were struggling with mentally and emotionally they start to fix themselves. But that's not always the answer. And so don't be afraid to seek a counselor or a therapist. That is totally something I've benefited from in my life. So one would be movement. Get in your steps. 2, make one positive change for your nutrition. 3, try to create a sleep routine or schedule. And then 4, prioritize your emotional and mental health. And if that means seeking someone in that field, then do so.
Now, before I let you go, again, I do want to hear where our listeners can go to learn more about you and Mass Movement.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone is interested in learning more about me or would be interested in any of the services that I provide, then go to my website. I think some of these things I'm going to say are going to be tagged in the podcast material, but it's Mario Mass with 2 S's, www.mariomass.com, and go to the About page. That's where it lists some of my philosophies about who I am. You can also email me at info at mariomass.com, or Cheryl can put my phone number in here too. Feel free to text or call me. Anyone who just would be interested to even have just a talk about any of the things we talked about here, feel free to schedule like a free call or consultation with me with like zero pressure. Again, even if it's something that you wanted to just get advice or elaborate on from this podcast, I'd be more than happy to do that. So yeah, those are the ways: email, phone call, or if you go to my website, you can find out more about me there. Oh, and I am on Instagram. There's a lot of videos that are old videos that you can get a taste for me. But I currently haven't been using that as much. But if you go to my Mass Movement 21 on Instagram, you can check out some things there.
And I will link all that below. And thank you so much for your time, the generosity that you've provided through your extra research for the episode. I'm so humbled by that, and sharing all of the knowledge that you've accumulated over the years about longevity and your personal training, and helping us all live longer, healthier, fulfilling lives. I'm so appreciative.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. I enjoyed it and appreciated it. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for listening to Honestly Aging by Friends Life Care VigR, a unique program focused on aging with vitality, independence, growth, and resilience. You can find links and show notes from this episode on our website at friendslifecare.org/podcast. Thank you to Mario Mascioli for joining us today. You can learn more about Mario and Mass Movement by visiting mariomass.com, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you like our show, please rate, review, subscribe, and join us next time. To learn more about aging with vitality, independence, growth, and resilience, subscribe to our blog at friendslifecare.org/blog.